you have to look at what is the case type, what are these typically valued at, and what do we want to spend to get it? And sometimes going through that process will determine the correct outlay of budget based on channel, based on case type, to build against a projected return on investment.
You're listening to the Legal Mastermind Podcast with your hosts Ryan Klein and Chase Williams, the go-to podcast for learning from the experts in the legal community about effective ways to grow and manage your law firm.
Welcome to another episode of the Legal Mastermind Podcast. This is Ryan Klein. As always, I have Chase Williams with me. And today is quite the exciting podcast that we have here. We have the legal marketing dream team over at Scorpion, and we're going to be discussing omni-channel marketing today as well as the importance of branding. But before we get started, why don't we have our introductions?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Peter Webb, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales over here at Scorpion. And I also have Angela Wearn, who's the Executive Vice President of our Personal Injury Division, as well as Bobby Ravan, which is our Director of Vertical Marketing, which is all tied to that. Just to give a brief overview of any of those who have not heard of Scorpion before, we really focus on providing a complete, comprehensive solution for law firms as well as other verticals to really get them in front of more of the types of clients they want to be getting in front of, with a strategy and a plan and technology to do so, and a team that really understands not only the business side of every dollar that goes into this must create a return on that investment, but also making sure we're really getting in front of more of those opportunities that they should be getting into. So I personally have been doing this for the past 20 years, and I've met with probably close to 6,600 firms that I've met with, consulted with, and or helped in some way or another really identify the answer to one really important question. And that question is, how do I get more of the cases I want without breaking the bank doing so, right? And so that has been asked by everything from large firms to small boutique practices. And really each firm is a little different, right? What that strategy should be and what putting their best foot forward looks like. And so that's the role that I played, is help tailor a strategy around each firm to achieve short and long-term success.
So I'm Angela Wearn. I head up the personal injury division at Scorpion. I've been working on legal marketing for the last probably about 6 or 7 years. And prior to that, I worked actually in insurance marketing, which is also a particularly competitive vertical. On a daily basis, I run a team of about 70 people that focus exclusively on personal injury marketing and all of our digital campaigns. So for myself, I'm not only am I creating a strategy for the individual niche campaigns that are contained within personal injury, like motor vehicle accidents, med mal, work comp, mass tort, all of anything that falls into that vertical, but I'm also working on individual campaigns. And I feel like that gives me a global view, as well as I get feedback specifically from clients, large and small, as to what they're seeing boots on the ground, what kind of things they're experiencing when they're doing intake, and I'm able to adjust using all of that information.
And I'm Bobby Ravan. I'm the Director of Vertical Marketing here at Scorpion. And over the last 5 years or more, I've been running our corporate marketing campaigns for the company. And we're essentially, on my team, we implement many of the tactics that we're going to discuss here today, in fact, with the audience. And our goal is really to educate attorneys on the best marketing strategies that are available for them and their practice, and in order to achieve their overall business objectives.
Yeah, Peter, Bobby, and Angela, thank you guys so much for those great intros. I know me and Ryan are a huge fan of what you guys do, especially with web design. I think you guys are like, the top notch in web design out there. So I'm super excited to be talking to you guys today. So really kicking it off, I know we wanted to talk about omni-channel marketing, specifically diversification, and how diversifying that marketing budget yields to maximum results.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump into this. obviously being, this is Peter over here. So the reason why I would like to at least chime in is having done this for, over 20 years now, I've really seen the evolution take quite an interesting turn. If we take a second and think back to the day where you would just put up a website, literally it took 24 hours to get first page, first position Google ranking. In fact, it was to the point where I could almost guarantee it. Hey, if we build a site, it'll rank on page 1 of Google, immediately. And as the internet grew and as more and more firms put their attention and budgets into the internet and into marketing and advertising, so too did the channels. And then it kind of evolved to let's do SEO, right? Search engine optimization, along with maybe some PPC, some paid advertising, some pay-per-click. And that has evolved. And so now we're using the word omni-channel because the truth is people are going all over the place. Some people are going to social media, then they go to reviews, and then they, end up later from their phone while waiting in line for coffee. They click on a paid ad, and then, they end up going directly to a site. And so however they end up going all over the place, each time they're kind of getting a little bit of an understanding of who that firm is, right? And so omni-channel marketing is really all of those efforts that are being put forth to make sure you're in all the channels you should be, always paying attention to, obviously, what are the costs to show up and how are budgeting and how are you tracking it. But really, it has to do with making sure you're found everywhere where your potential client is going. So each step of the way, they're constantly hit with a reason why your firm, why should they pick up the phone and call you? And so really omni-channel marketing has to do with identifying those channels, tying those channels into case type, because different case types will have different channels, right? Like Google AdWords is a pretty broad scope, right? But there's certain directories, there's certain times where blogging or doing articles or content promotion, there's so many different methods. So really making sure you're diversifying in an intelligent manner so that way you are every step of the way right there in front of each of your potential clients, right? And that way an individual, let's say someone who's injured in an accident, right? Whether they're looking for representation right away, they might be more prone to going to Google and looking for an attorney, right? I need a car accident attorney. Whereas another individual, let's say a med mal attorney, right, who's trying to get a case, maybe they would take a slightly more diversified approach for those individuals who are doing their due diligence of, can I even sue a hospital, right? That's not tied to an attorney yet. It's asking questions to really identify. And so if you only have the strategy or the mentality of let's put all our eggs in one basket, you'd probably miss out on cases.
So we definitely agree with exploring different options and channels when it comes to doing marketing, especially digitally. And so from what we've seen, it's not very uncommon for lawyers to engage in SEO, some paid, maybe do some remarketing for people that visit the website. So when you have all these things going on and you're staying in front of potential clients consistently, how are you able to gauge which channels are actually working and which ones aren't?
Understanding each channel and what that channel is actually designed to produce, I think, is something that's really important. Running AdWords is going to have a completely different outcome than running a branded campaign or running a social campaign. I find there's a common mistake that's made where every single dollar that is spent is then tied back to what the specific lead generation that it produced, which is understandable because at the end of the day, it's about getting cases. But I think people need to understand that depending on what channel you're using or what tactic you're running, you should know the correct metrics and expectations from that channel versus just going back to straight lead generation. And then tying it all together, knowing that the stronger your brand is, the less it's going to cost you to acquire cases overall. And being that that's the ultimate goal, you have to utilize technology to gauge exactly what is being brought in by each channel, and then how that's contributing to the rise overall of cases and leads and clicks, and tracking it all the way back to the beginning. So having the technology to do that is very important. But then also knowing what those channels are intended to produce and why that's important to the overall good of the campaign.
Thanks so much, Angela. So what are some unique or new channels that you guys are seeing some success in?
Honestly, at this point, there's so many channels. I think I did a little bit of research because we have such a specific niche that we work on in legal marketing. But I think now there are over 40 channels that you can get a message out to public, whether it be influencer, whether it be social, whether it be TikTok, any kind of way that you can get a message out in front of someone. So the channels are so plentiful at this point that's where it comes back to the strategy, as Peter mentioned. What is it that you're trying to get? What we're seeing, video obviously is I think a strong front runner in terms of a channel that people should be utilizing and investing in, just simply because that's how people are consuming media so much today. Paid ads, obviously you're capturing someone directly at the time when they're searching, which is a really important point to be there, obviously much lower down on the funnel. But in addition to that, now when you're looking to provide content, when you're looking to provide resources for people that are looking, you need to utilize those channels smartly. So I think for me, the average law firm out there should be capturing people when they're specifically looking for an attorney, but then also building up their own expertise through content and doing that in a smart way. As well as using video. Those are the ones that I see as the strongest front runners. In some particular niches of of personal injury vertical, social is also becoming a huge component, especially in things like mass tort, because you are trying to raise awareness for a particular issue, and that is a way that that reaches a broad audience, and you have the ability to target specifically to the demographics that you're looking for, who may be having the issue that you're trying to capture.
And one thing that I would just like to add, we've seen cases come from areas that I never would have assumed that they would come from. Places like Yelp, right? We all think Yelp is like a great place if you're, especially in another city, restaurants, bars, something like that. What are the reviews and things like that? But we've generated cases on Yelp. We've generated cases from people going to Instagram, right? Which is an interesting place to find a personal injury attorney, right? And it comes back to that Omni-Channel, which is they might become interested or aware of the firm in one place and then convert in one of these other channels, right? We have, in an attempt to raise awareness for certain case types, or what are the options to an injured victim, there are places where we'll do content promotion, where you might find a post on Business Insider if someone's doing their research, or we generated, for instance, a truck accident, a giant multi-million-dollar truck accident case, because the grandmother who was looking on behalf of her grandson, who was a trucker, and she went to the Better Business Bureau online. And so at this point, it begs, the question, and more so the need and the requirement to make sure wherever someone can go online, we are ensuring we're in each of those channels and there's tracking in place to make sure that those dollars are well spent.
I would agree.
Yep.
A question about that too. So when you're kind of evaluating the value, are you kind of establishing some sort of return on investment? Because I feel like for personal injury, sometimes, a lot of marketers will be like, all you have to do is sign up one case and this will pay for itself for a year or 2 years or 5 years. And then like for some other practice areas like criminal defense, it may only, cover it for a month or two. So are you kind of gauging our ROI when to continue? Okay.
Absolutely. And part of that has to be established at the beginning before anything is even run. That's part of the evaluation of a partnership gauged on the strategy. Here's a question I ask every single firm I meet with. How are we going to gauge success of this campaign? Because bottom line, you have to get cases to justify the expenditure, right? But knowing a car wreck, like a run-of-the-mill car wreck case, is almost always going to be a lower fee, even contingency fee, based anywhere in the country than, let's say, an 18-wheeler tractor-trailer case, right? Or a motorcycle case, because of the nature of, more catastrophic or serious injuries are going to occur, right? Which means, obviously, depending on economic damages and punitive damages or what have you. But you have to look at what is the case type, what are these typically valued at, and what do we want to spend to get it? And sometimes going through that process will determine the correct outlay of budget based on channel, based on case type, to build against a projected return on investment. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're not going to know definitively like you would with a retainer type case, like a criminal defense or family law case, right, which is more on the upfront side. Contingency fee is you never know what you're going to get until the very end, but at least a projection makes sure that you're in line with what you should be spending.
Yeah, I'd follow up as well. We're constantly in touch with our clients in particular about exactly what is coming in from the campaigns that we're running, because everything is tied back to ROI. Obviously, as Peter mentioned, if you're putting money into something, you want to be getting something out. So we find that we will consult with them to find out what it is that they need to be getting out, but also bringing our expertise to the table in terms of we're running hundreds of campaigns throughout the nation. So it helps for us to also give them an idea of what does that market look like for them? What is the expectation? And what are the costs that not only we're seeing, but other people are seeing, so that we can tie that into realistic expectations, as well as ensure that at the outset of the campaign, when we're building the strategy, that it makes sense. It's going to get the desired outcome that someone wants.
Angela, you briefly mentioned the importance of branding and how branding could be a really great way to build your business online and also, lower your acquisition costs. So what are some best ways to accomplish that?
It's funny because the amount of time it takes to brand a firm so that it's top of mind is pretty significant, especially because it's so busy in what people are seeing. I think that the best way to do it is consistency of message. You have to be there constantly. Unless you happen to be there at the exact moment that that person needs you, you're not going to be particularly relevant to them at any given time. It's sort of like when let's say you make a decision, hey, I want to buy a Hyundai. All of a sudden you start seeing Hyundais all over the road, whereas you never noticed them before. It's just how our minds are geared to work. So if you don't need an attorney, you may not notice that there is an attorney billboard on every highway that you drive down in the entire United States every couple of miles. But once you need one, you start to notice that. So I think consistency is really key. Also having a clear message about who you are, and then as much personalization and display of expertise that you possibly can have for your particular either niche practice area or who you are and what you can do for the person. So really, I think I've said it 3 times now, but consistency is the most important thing.
And I would certainly add to that, to everything Angela's saying. Branding is more important nowadays than it ever has been before, certainly with the rise in the costs in order to advertise online. Where there's specific campaigns designed to generate leads, you run a branding campaign in conjunction with that, your overall cost to acquire cases is going to go much lower, because your branding campaigns are going to help your lead generation campaigns, because your firm is going to be more recognizable to people that are actually searching for representation. Also, your branding should do a really great job of establishing kind of a human connection with your potential clients. It should represent the values that your firm stands for. It should bring some personality to behind who your firm is and the kinds of services that you're providing. And it's up to you as the attorney, as the manager of that firm, to kind of control how your firm is perceived by the public. And by having a consistent brand, having consistent messaging, it will have that message be very recognizable for the audience that you're trying to reach overall, and certainly at times when they're actually searching for representation.
Do you guys think that typically, the law firms do a good job establishing their branding within like their website, but then it gets lost or muddled when they start doing advertising elsewhere?
I think that people take a lot of pride in how they're presented on their website, as they should. Most people work really hard. Most attorneys work really hard to do a good job for their clients, and they take a lot of pride in that. And I would agree with you. I don't think it necessarily carries out beyond that. So you then need to establish getting people to the actual website in order to display that, as opposed to utilizing those differentiators and those things that make you as an attorney particularly good or valuable to a potential client, and putting that message out there in a proactive way, as opposed to sort of just waiting for them to maybe find you and then notice how great you are.
Yeah, in fact, I would chime in here and just say, seeing that I'm on the front lines where I'm getting called almost on a daily basis, Peter, can you come in and take a look at what we have and what we're doing with our practice? One for one, when I come in and I say, well, talk to me a little bit about your brand, I get, 100 different answers from 100 different people, and they might be all, even within the same firm. And really, there's an old school versus new school kind of concept of what branding is, and we could get into that as well. But for me, a large part of it is looking at the better you are known, perceived, trusted, the lower your cost to acquire cases by those that are evaluating you online. That is a fact, and I see it time in and time out, which is a new firm might have the budget, but they're not well known, where they have to pay to get in front of, let's say, 20 people to make the phone ring, let's say 7 times to end up signing one client. Whereas the firms that have built up that brand, that trusted name, especially locally, maybe they only need to get 7 people, in front of them to make 3 phone calls to sign one client. The cost to get in front of 20 people versus 7 in this example is obviously exponentially more expensive. So it really does play a big difference when we're looking at conversion.
I think brand is also one of those, as Peter and Bobby both know, I get annoyed by all the acronyms and buzzwords in our industry, because at the end of the day, it's actually pretty simple. A brand is just delivering your message clearly and succinctly, reaffirming your credibility to the person, building an emotional connection with that person, showing goodwill that you do in the community, and then motivating them in whatever way to take a next step or to continue in the process of wanting to speak to you. Where it becomes complicated, which I think you touched on, Ryan, is that there's so many ways to do it now that you kind of forget that you need to be actually pushing those things strongly on every single channel. Not just when you meet someone in person, not just that your business card looks good or your letterhead is right and you spend a bunch of time on your logo and it looks great, but proactively doing that through all the channels that are available, which is understandably daunting because it's so many now. But the idea behind branding and the importance of it is very basic.
And to kind of just to wrap it up to what Angela's point, attorneys need to remember that as a consumer, as an individual, we're inundated on a daily basis by thousands of brands in our face everywhere that we look, whether it's offline or online, anywhere that we look, where brands are representing themselves to us. So law firms should be no different in their approach in order to get clients, because that's what the expectation of a client is. They're looking for somebody that is well branded, that has a consistent message, that they know the values that they stand for as a company. That's what the consumer expects when they're making any hiring decision or any purchasing decision. Certainly hiring representation for a legal matter is no different nowadays, because that's how people are wired today. So they're essentially looking for that across the board, no matter what it is. And the attorneys that recognize that need within the consumer, that is their potential client, are the ones that are doing better in terms of acquiring cases at a lower cost.
Another thing to remember, which I talk about with a lot of our clients pretty frequently, is that the consumer in this case, the potential client, is very uneducated in how to choose an attorney. To them, the guy that has a huge billboard and is, showing a person with a giant check, that's who they see constantly. And so they don't have necessarily the background or know-how to vet an attorney. So they don't even know that it may be the guy who doesn't do that type of marketing, or it may be that guy. Those are absolutely completely valid in certain circumstances, but they largely don't know how to vet an attorney and choose someone. So your brand is what is telling them who you are and why it's important that they choose you over someone else. From my side, there's no online or offline anymore. You can't just put money into buying paid ads or running TV and billboards and call it a day. Everything works together to build the brand of your firm and position you to get cases. If you want to do it effectively, you have to personalize your message. You have to bring value. You have to show that you're an expert, which means you need a team. You need to understand digital marketing and how it works. And that's why it becomes difficult for a lot of people. But they all work hand in hand to execute the strategy of getting cases. And I think that that's very important to remember, that it's not a set it and forget it method. It's a constant monitoring. It's utilizing technology. It's refining your message and getting yourself out there.
And to kind of just add to that a little bit, we have to keep in mind that there's a journey that a potential client takes on their way to finding you. And it's very easy to lose somebody at any point within that journey if you're inconsistent, if they see something that they don't like, if they read a negative review, or if a message that they see on one channel is different than a message that they see on another channel. And you may not even be aware that you've lost that potential client on their way to you, because they never reach out to you. So in order to make sure that all of these things are really providing the maximum value, they need to be coordinated efforts with each other so that the sum of the parts adds up to greater than the whole.
What are some ways you guys recommend keeping the branding consistent, since there are so many channels?
For one, I think it's really going through the motions of who are we, what separates us from everyone else, right? Which are the differentiators. Who are our ideal clients? How do we want to be perceived? If you go through that exercise, you have a pretty good understanding of who you are. Funny enough, I was just on a call before this podcast where this firm has been using this tagline for a long time. And I said, well, what does that even mean today to your clients? And he said, funny enough, it doesn't mean anything. And I said, well, why are you spending all this time and effort if it's not even something that fits and embodies who you are, right? So I think to properly, answer that question, coming up with who are your clients and what's going to communicate to them, whether it's an aggressive tone, passionate, statistical, whatever that tone is, empathetic, whether you want to sum it up into a tagline or just this logo, or what is the reason why you're even around, doing that will help you answer the question of how do you create a ubiquitous sense of who you are to those clients, right? And then from there, the various channels can reflect that, because it's not going to be mix matched. One of the ways, or one of the things that causes a little bit of a tricky component, funny enough, with this firm I was just meeting with, was he used 5 different agencies for 5 different components of his digital marketing. And I said, well, how well do they communicate together? Because if one finds success using this messaging or verbiage, well, they're not inclined to pass that on to the next guy, because they want to create job security. So, and unfortunately, no lawyers don't learn marketing or business in law school, right? So they might not have a core sense of what's right, what's wrong, marketing 101. And so therefore, unfortunately, the brand sometimes gets really diluted, whether it's through multiple different agencies or because they didn't do that exercise at the beginning.
Well, I definitely appreciate everyone's participation and coming in. I love the expertise and the background and insight. If anyone listening, any law firms want to pursue new marketing channels or improve upon what they're doing nowadays, who's the best person to get in contact with?
Well, you can always reach out, go to our website, scorpion.co, or Google us or anything like that. And depending on the vertical and depending on what you're looking for, the way that we have set it up is internally at Scorpion, we are all verticalized. So anyone who comes to us would be working with a team of experts that are just geared towards that area of law or those types of cases. So the three of us on the call, today, all deal with personal injury, work comp, med mal, things like that. So you'd likely be speaking with myself or Angela regarding that. But we have, believe it or not, over 950 full-time Scorpion employees all in-house. So we've really gone to the trouble of having attorneys on staff and ensuring that anyone who calls us, we really focus on what's the correct solution and strategy for them.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Legal Mastermind podcast. If you're interested in working with Ryan and Chase, please email mastermind@marketmymarket.com. Make sure to join the free mastermind group for growing and managing your firm at lawfirmmastermind.com. Ryan Klein and Chase Williams are the managing partners at Market My Market, one of the top legal marketing companies in the United States.